Well, hello everybody. It's that time again. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the New York Times. This is Saturday, March 21st, 2026. Your reader is Joe Gibbs. How's everybody doing? Hope your week's going good so far and that you're having a great weekend. Let me take a look at what we have here in the New York Times. Quote of the day. It's so tremendously efficient, you can curate an image that perfectly fits the vibe you're trying to produce. That's from Timothy Caulfield of Health Law Institute of University of Alberta on the growing use of lifelike AI avatars to sell wellness products. Yep, AI is everything. So let's take a look. A headline from history. Dodgers conquer Athletics by 4-2. March 21st, 1934. The Brooklyn Dodgers defeated the Philadelphia Athletics 4-2 in a spring training exhibition game in Fort Myers, Florida, the Times reported. But much of the focus was on the Athletics starting pitcher Mildred Babe Dickerson, 22, a nationally known all-around athlete. She pitched one inning with a graceful, easy delivery, allowing no runs after walking one batter and hitting another with a pitch. The inning ended with a triple play. The baseball game was 2 years after Dickerson's won 3 medals, 2 gold and 1 silver in track and field at the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. She became best known for her success in golf and was one of the founders of the LPGA. The Associated Press declared Dickerson the world's greatest woman athlete of the first half of the 20th century. She went by Babe Dickerson Zaharias after marriage, died of cancer in 1956 at the age of only 45. So she did definitely accomplish a lot in sports and life and was deceased by 45. What do we have here? Oh, let's see. What might we suggest? 4 weekend recommendations from around the newsroom. Camping out at the opera. I don't think so. Opera glasses aside, you'll need to bring some extra reinforcements for the Metropolitan Opera's Tristan und Isolde, which runs nearly 5 hours with intermissions. What? Patrons are settling in for the performance with baby carrots, candy, and plenty of caffeine. Get your espresso brewing at NewYorkTimes.com-styles. That is not sounding fun to me. Maybe it does to some of you. Not a 5-hour opera. Going full Godzilla, number 2. Joe Mackin, a delivery truck driver from Queens, created an extraordinarily detailed model of New York City that includes every building in the 5 boroughs. I've seen this, and it is amazing. What he did is unbelievable. All in miniature. His 50 by 25-foot city is now on view at the Museum of the City of New York. Actually, trampling through the tiny skyscrapers, however, is definitely not recommended. NewYorkTimes.com-real estate. Number 3. Sinking your teeth into a book. There's a vampire novel out there for every type of reader. The best-selling author Kirsten White recently wrote for the book review. Her recommendations include The Dreamy Cours and the Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Canas, the sweet graphic novel Fangs by Sarah Anderson, and The Buffalo Hunter, a historical epic by Stephen Graham Jones. And there's always a dramatic, bloody soap opera angst that helps set the standard. Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. Find more picks at NewYorkTimes.com/books. And the 4th thing they want to suggest, Solving a great art mystery. Many have tried and failed to unmask the perpetrators behind the largest art theft in U.S. history, the 1990 robbery of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. A new book by Jeffrey Kelly, the FBI agent who handled the case for 22 years, dismisses many of the theories on who ended up with the loot, which included masterpieces by Rembrandt and Vermeer. But hey, maybe you're the right armchair detective for the job. Brush up on the details of the case and get cracking on that $10 million reward at NewYorkTimes.com-art. Facts of interest. Number 1, a study in the British Journal of Psychology found that people overestimated their ability to recognize AI-generated faces, leaving them vulnerable to fraud and deception. Another fact, more than 40 states have legalized marijuana to some extent, but the U.S. government still classifies it as a dangerous illegal drug compared to heroin. Another fact, in Turks and Caicos, a chain of Caribbean islands just southeast of the Bahamas, food can cost double or triple what it does in the United States. Next, a typical Rocky Mountain bull elk weighs 700 pounds and stands more than 5 feet tall at the shoulder. A few hundred elk on farmland can cause thousands of dollars in damage by eating crops, uprooting plants, and trampling fields into mud. I don't doubt that at all. After decades of research and modernization, strawberries have become one of South Korea's top fresh agricultural exports. Farmers have created better varieties and built greenhouses that maintain ideal conditions all year. And in the United States, beef prices are up 20% over the past year. Who is not surprised? How many times every week do we talk about a price going up? And here's something that says, take a second look, shifting gears. The cost of buying and owning a car has become unaffordable for many Americans. Steep car prices and high interest rates for auto loans are partly to blame. The rising price of gas, consequence of war in Iran, is also adding to affordability concerns. Many Americans are falling behind on monthly loan payments, holding on their older vehicles, or choosing not to insure their car altogether. Will the rising cost of car ownership drive Americans to reconsider other priorities, such as where they work or how they get there? And let's see what this says. This says, here to help. How to get back into running this spring. I used to do that. Not in a long time. Record low temperatures and relentless snow in many parts of the country made this winter difficult for outdoor training. We asked running experts to share their advice for rebuilding endurance, avoiding injury, and enjoying yourself this spring running season. It says slow start. After weeks of being cooped up, it may be tempting to sprint out the door. But your cardiovascular system and muscles need time to rebuild strength and endurance, said Steve Murrah, a running coach who oversees group training for the New York Road Runners. Pushing deconditioned muscles too hard too soon increases your chance of injury. Dr. Adam Tenforty, a sports medicine physician at Mass General Brigham, suggested runners start with 2 or 3 slow and relatively short runs a week, taking walk breaks as needed. 1 to 4 miles can be a good place to begin, depending on your fitness level. After a few weeks of rebuilding a baseline of movement, you can start to dial up the intensity of your runs or increase your distance, Dr. Tenaforti said. This says, use strength training to accelerate your comeback. Healthy habits beget healthy habits, Mr. Murrah said. When you're in a regular running routine, you may also feel motivated to strength train. Strengthening the muscles you use to propel yourself forward. namely your core, glutes, and other lower body muscles, will help to prevent injury and enhance your ability to bounce back, said Dr. Tamana Singh, a cardiologist and director of the Sports Cardiology Center at the Cleveland Clinic. And there's an illustration of a man jogging. You can see him through trees. Looks like he's going to like a park area. And then the article continues, before or after a run or on the days in between, carve out a few minutes for planks, squats, lunges, calf raises, and glute exercises. If you find that your lower body is sore or aching after a run, give yourself a day or more to recover before stressing those muscles again, the expert said. This says, remember that challenge is build mental stamina. Your mindset can make the difference between a triumphant return and a frustrated one, the expert said. If the first few weeks of spring running feel particularly difficult, try reminding yourself that obstacles can help to build mental resilience and stamina, both of which will make a stronger runner, Dr. Singh said. Keep in mind you're not starting from scratch. Evidence suggests that getting back into shape is easier for people with a history of being active and that our muscles hold on to memory of past strength. Well, that's some interesting stuff there. I'm sure everyone is feeling the winter slugs, right? Those slugginess, have to get up and get walking, get moving. Feels good to get your body going. So this is something I think we spoke about previously, certain situations with news and radio. CBS News to close radio division amid latest round of layoffs. And it shows the CBS Broadcast Center says the cuts are expected to affect several dozen journalists and crew members at numerous shows. And the radio division will cease operations on May 22nd. So, by Michael Grinbaum and Benjamin Mullen, the article, CBS News eliminated its century-old radio division, which broadcasts Edward Murrow's World War II dispatches from London amid a round of layoffs on Friday, announced by the network's editor-in-chief, Barry Weiss. More than 60 employees, or roughly 6% of the news division, are set to be laid off under the plan, according to a person who requested anonymity and to share internal details. Certain parts of the newsroom need to get smaller in order for us to make room for the things that we need to build to remain competitive in the future. Ms. Weiss, who started her job in October, said during a newsroom-wide conference call on Friday, according to a recording. CBS News Radio, which has roots in the Jazz Age, was once among the premier news broadcasters in the country. CBS News Radio served as the foundation for everything we have built since 1927, said Tom Zebrowski, the president of CBS News, wrote in a memo. But the decline of radio news, coupled with the rise of podcasts and other online sources of information, significantly reduced the size of the division in recent years. CBS News earned $67,000 in revenue in February, according to a person familiar with internal stats. The radio division, which transmits news reports to subscriber stations around the country, will cease operations on May 22nd. Ms. Weiss and her team had examined ways to preserve the division, but Mr. Zebrowski wrote in his memo that it was impossible to continue the service. CBS News came under the control of David Ellison, a billionaire tech, after his Hollywood studio Skydance absorbed the media giant Paramount last year. The Trump administration approved Mr. Ellison's purchase after Paramount paid $16 million to settle a suit brought by President Trump against 60 Minutes. Mr. Ellison said he wanted CBS News to appeal to a centrist audience, and he installed Ms. Weiss, an opinion journalist and critic of the mainstream news media, as its now new leader. She made swift changes, re-engineering CBS Evening News and hiring new contributors, arguing that the news division needed to more quickly adapt to the digital era. CBS morning and evening newscasts routinely rank behind its rivals ABC and NBC in the Nielsen ratings. The news division also laid off about 100 employees last year. Ms. Weiss has been accused of hewing to a more Trump-friendly editorial approach, especially after she postponed a 60-minute segment that was critical of the Trump administration's deporting Venezuelan migrants to a harsh Salvadorian prison. Ms. Weiss has said she makes editorial decisions on her own. In a memo to CBS News on Friday, Ms. Weiss and Mr. Zabrowski wrote that it's no secret that the news business is changing radically and that we need to change along with it. New audiences are burgeoning in new places, and we are pressing forward with ambitious plans to grow and invest so that we can be there for them, they wrote. New audiences, Mrs. Weiss signaled that she would like to add more podcasts at CBS News and bring on younger internet-savvy contributors who may appeal to audiences more accustomed to consuming news on social media. On the Friday morning call, Ms. Weiss told employees that the layoffs had absolutely nothing to do with the quality of your work and the way you have poured your heart and soul into the organization. It simply has everything to do with the times we're living in, she said. Yep, everything is definitely changing, and there's just so many ways to get media now that it's kind of difficult to compete in radio. It's not always going to do that. We have here. Now let's take a look and see what it says for our ever roller coaster of weather. You know, as soon as you think it's going to be nice, it was 60, 70. Everyone was outside, no jackets on. It was down to 20s and 30s, and I've seen my yard covered with snow a few times since that nice weather. So what does it say? National forecast. A massive area of high pressure will continue to act as a giant heat dome in much of the west with expansion to the plains today. Widespread high temperatures are forecast to be in the 80s and 90s with some 100-degree Fahrenheit readings in the deserts and in central Texas. Some daily record highs will be set, as well as monthly highs for March and season-to-date highs. Much of the zone from California and Oregon to the plains and Mississippi Valley are forecast to be sunny. There will be lingering clouds and showers in parts of Washington, and some rains and snow will skirt the northern tier of Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Warmth is expected to build over the Ohio Valley and southeast with highs ranging from 50s to 80s. There will be some showers and heavy thunderstorms from Tennessee to northern Georgia and the Carolinas. Farther north, some rain and snow will occur in northern Michigan. The storm bringing the wintry weather will slice into the northeast later this weekend. Chilly air is forecast to linger in much of the northeast today, except for some warmer air that will reach the central part of the Appalachians. A stronger warm surge will reach much of the mid-Atlantic on Sunday, as colder air and snow are expected over its northern tier of the northeast. Focus: very warm air shifts east Sunday. A surge of near record-breaking warmth is expected to expand into the Mid-Atlantic on Sunday. Afternoon temperatures may reach the low 80s as far as southern PA. The immediate coast will remain much cooler due to the afternoon sea breeze. Yeah, I don't see Buffalo getting anything good here. Looks like our highs and lows, what are we looking at here? High 48, low 37 for today, and high 48 and low 29 for tomorrow. Yeah, it's balmy. That's balmy, people. Wonderful. What do we want to chat about, huh? Okay. Let's take a look at the old, beautiful, hey, Brooklyn Academy of Music. Here's an article. The Brooklyn Academy of Music selects a new president. Let's listen here. We say Brooklyn Academy of Music announced on Thursday that it had appointed Tamara McCaw, a longtime New York arts leader, to serve as its president as the center emerges from a period of shrinking audiences, declining revenue, and turnover in its upper ranks. McCaw, 49, who has served as interim president since last June, was selected unanimously by BAM's Board of Trustees from a field of 60 applicants, said Diane L. Max, the chairman of the board. McCaw and BAM's third president in the past decade. Gina Duncan left in June of 25 at the end of her 3-year contract, and Katie Clark stepped down in 2021 after 5 years in the job. By contrast, Clark's predecessor, Karen Brooks Hopkins, was president for 16 years. BAM, or Brooklyn Academy of Music, officials said that attendance was recovering after a downturn that, like those at other art organizations, began before the coronavirus pandemic, but intensified because of it. During the difficult period, many art leaders suggested that BAM had lost some of the spark that had long drawn patrons from across New York, particularly as it competed with venues like The Shed and the Park Avenue Armory in Manhattan. In 2025, BAM said it had 700,000 visitors, as attendance returned to pre-pandemic numbers, while ticket revenue for the year was at $15.5 million, the second highest in the last decade. McCaw and Max said the programs of dance, music, film, and theater planned for the center's 4 venues, including a presentation of Hamlet from the National Theatre in London, directed by Robert Hasty, which he actually did Operation Mincemeat, would assure BAM's appeal in the years ahead. We are very happy with our strategic plan, Max said. McCaw said that she intended to stay longer than her immediate predecessors. She had worked there from 1999 to 2016, including as Director of Government and Community Affairs for 8 years. She left for The Shed, where she served as inaugural Chief Civic Program Officer. We are focused on stability, McCaw said, of her coming tenure at BAM and the future of the center. If you look at who I am definitely a lifer. It's my community-based roots. It takes time to do anything. BAM, she said, made me, adding, is where I found my friends and my wife. Max played down the changes that had preceded McCaw's arrival, including the departure of the artistic director David Binder in 2023 after just 4 years. By contrast, his predecessor Joseph Maleo served for 35 years. I think it's the world, she said, when asked about BAM's instability, but I'll be honest that much of what we felt we could value in Tamara is that she has stayed in her 2 long-term positions. There are still tough times ahead. The struggles are out there are real, McCaw said, but we are resilient. We are structured to meet those challenges. McCaw was born in Jamaica and came to the United States when she was 2. She'll have an easy commute to her new job. I live in Flatbush, Little Caribbean, and absolutely love it, she said. Brooklyn is in my soul. So good luck to Tamara McCaw, who will be president of Brooklyn Academy of Music. May they have the best of luck. Here's a little business. Unilever is considering sale of its food business. Unilever is in talks to sell its food business to McCormick. McCormick's huge. Potentially a major shift for the British consumer goods company as it seeks to focus on higher growth household and personal care businesses. London listed Unilever, owner of Hellmann's Mayonnaise, Knorr Cubes, and Marmite Spreads, said on Friday it had received an offer from spice maker McCormick. McCormick, which owns the Cholula hot sauce brand, confirmed it was engaged in discussions with Unilever regarding a potential transaction involving the food business. The talks are on acceleration of Unilever CEO Fernando Fernandez's plan to shift Unilever toward faster-growing non-food categories following the spin-off of its ice cream business last year. We think it's sensible that Unilever are looking for options at their food business, said Richard Saldana, Global Equity Portfolio Manager at Aviva, a Unilever investor. It's clear that the company wants to focus on areas such as personal care and beauty, where underlying category and volume growth are more attractive. Unilever's food business make about a quarter of its total sales. In 2025, generating more than 12.9 billion euros, $14.91 billion last year. But the division is growing slower than Unilever's overall business, and it faces headwinds from a more move away from processed foods. Politicians have warned about their health risk, and consumers turning to weight loss drugs are eating less. Well, I mean, they're not suffering that bad. I mean, they only did, like 14 billion. I can see where they're concerned. All right. What does this say here? Oil prices send Wall Street slumping. Dashing rate cuts hope. Stocks and bonds. Another climb for oil prices shook stock markets on Friday as hopes collapsed for a possible cut to interest rates this year by the Federal Reserve. The S&P 500 fell 1.5% to close its fourth straight losing week, its longest such streak in a year. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 443 points, or 1%, and the NASDAQ Composite tumbled 2%. The market's losses deepened after oil prices erased an early dip and accelerated in the afternoon. Brent crude, the international standard, rose 3.3% to settle at $112.19 per barrel. Benchmark U.S. crude gained 2.3% to 98.32 per barrel. Stocks also bent under the weight of leaping yields in the bond market. Higher yields make mortgage rates and other borrowing more expensive for the U.S. household and companies, slowing the economy, and they grind down on prices for all kinds of investments. Treasury yields have been jumping on worries the war with Iran will cause a long-term spike in oil and natural gas prices that drives up inflation. Worries have gotten so high that traders have canceled nearly all their bets that the Federal Reserve could cut interest rates this year, according to the data from CME Group. Some even think the Fed could raise the rates in 2026, a nearly unthinkable scenario before the war began. I think it would be a market-shaking, Ann Maletti, head of equity investments at Allspring Global Investments, said about a rate hike. But she also said that if oil prices stay high for a long time, they would likely drag so much on the economy that the Fed would not raise rates. Lower interest rates would give the economy and investment prices a boost. There's something President Trump has angrily been calling for. Before the war, traders were betting heavily that the Fed would cut rates at least twice this year. But lower rates risk worsening inflation, and the investors now see little room for central banks worldwide to cut interest rates to help their economies. Besides, the Federal Reserve, central banks in Europe, Japan, and the United Kingdom also held their interest rates steady for the past week. The price of Brent crude has zigzagged sharply on its way from roughly 70 per barrel before the war began to high as 119.50 this week. Big swings have struck hour to hour as financial markets try to handicap how long the war will last and how much damage it will do to oil and gas production in the Persian Gulf. The U.S. stock market has a history of bouncing back relatively quickly from past conflicts in the Middle East and elsewhere, as long as oil prices don't stay too high for too long. Oil prices aren't a red flag point yet, Ms. Milletti said, but we're getting close if the duration is long enough. If 3 months from now we're in a similar situation, not only myself but a lot of other investors will be much more cautious, she said, while companies can adjust to gradual rises in oil prices. Ms. Milletti said they're less able to quickly change their business models after a sudden spike becomes a new normal. On Wall Street, Super Microcomputer lost a third of its value and tumbled 33.3% to help drag the U.S. stock market lower. The U.S. government accused a senior vice president of the company and 2 others affiliated with it of conspiring to smuggle billions of dollars of computer servers containing advanced NVIDIA chips to China. The company said it has been operating with the investigation and is not a defendant in the indictment. It placed its 2 accused employees on administrative leave and terminated its relationship with accused contractor. Roughly 3 out of every 4 stocks in the S&P 500 fell. Stocks of smaller companies which can feel the pinch of higher interest rates more than their bigger rivals led the way lower. All right, little business. Sooner those gas prices go down, the better it'll be for everybody. What do we have here? Well, here is a different story than what we normally read about. There is an illustration. It's probably half the page up and down on this New York Times section. And it's 2 guys. You see them close. And there's got to be, 100 or 200 elk, if not more, on this pasture. Really cool. And it says, where elk are prized, but also a pest. In a wild corner of Northwest, tension over how to help the animals thrive in controlling where they go. And there's other illustrations. There's elk here in the woods. There's another spot they say angling and hunting licenses are sold here, and there's some brush and some fencing. And then here is another illustration of the elk out on this long, big pasture. Elk at Wallowa Lake in Oregon in 1935. Wow. Decades before, they had been easy to hunt and were at a risk of disappearing. The other thing says, in Baker County, Oregon, elk are protected in a wildlife area, but hunters can also buy licenses. Some ranchers try to keep hunters away. Top Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife technicians at the wildlife area where they put out hay. So what are they saying about elk? Let's see what they have to say. I never knew elk would make the New York Times in a full-page article with a giant picture of, elk. Traveling through the Blue Mountains where Washington, Idaho, and Oregon meet, elk are everywhere. On road signs, restaurant menus, home decor, and increasingly the 4,300 acres where Sean Robertson raises cattle. On a recent winter afternoon, he drove his pickup slowly down Grant County Road 88 the gravel dividing line between his property where thin stands of trees slope down and a wide valley and Malheur National Forest, thick with trees and overgrown. Animal tracks stood out on the snow-dusted road between them, elk, coyotes, a mountain lion, and more elk. These elk are just moving all the time to find someplace safe, said Mr. Robertson, who turned to ranching after a career as a biologist, including working for the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. We're seeing them more often because there's nowhere they feel safe. For decades, federal and state wildlife managers assumed that elk would spend most of their time in national forests, where hunting quotas and habitat management could keep populations in check. But across the Blue Mountains, a complicated mix of forces is pushing elk onto private land like Mr. Robertson's ranch in Oregon, fueling political conflict, economic strain, and concern among biologists about declining calf survival. Near constant shifts in forest management, rising predator pressure, and increasing severe wildfires are part of the problem. So is President Trump's push to expand access to public lands for logging, recreation, and hunting. It's bad for the elk. It's bad for the humans, said Jason Earl, a conflict supervisor overseeing 7 counties in southeastern Washington for the state's Department of Fish and Wildlife. His team uses noisemakers, bright lights, and their mere presence to scare off elk when they encroach on private land. Historically, farmers and state regulators focus more on protecting and encouraging the spread of elk than scaring them. The animals are a primary part of the diet of many native tribes and were a source of food for white settlers in the mid to late 1800s. Elk were so easy to hunt that by the turn of the 20th century, they were at risk of disappearing. In the 1910s, Oregon and Washington officials brought in elk from Yellowstone and other parts of Montana and Wyoming by train and horse-drawn wagons. They thrived, leading to the modern problem. Elk favor well-managed forests with enough clearing to produce grass and shrubs to eat, and sufficient cover to hide from predators like mountain lions, bears, and humans. But in the last decades, federal policy has swung like a weather vane in a hurricane. In the 1970s and 80s, widespread logging across federal forests in the Blue Mountains and surrounding ranges reduced the tree cover that elk use for safety. In the 1990s and early 2000s, environmental concerns led to crackdowns on logging, creating forests that may have felt safer but become dense with trees and brush that elk don't want to eat. Today, more than a decade of increasingly destructive wildfires has prompted another shift. Federal policy is moving back toward thinning forests to reduce wildfire fuel. At the same time, the Trump administration is pushing for more roads, more trails, and more forests open to hunters, hikers, and off-road vehicles. Biologists say their success in restoring populations of predators such as mountain lions, bears, wolves, has added to the pressure elk feel on a public land. A typical Rocky Mountain bull elk weighs 700 pounds and stands more than 5 feet tall to shoulder. Cows are smaller but can still run 500 pounds. A few hundred elk on farmland can cause thousands of dollars in damage by eating crops, uprooting plants, and trampling fields into mud. The state of Washington recently more than doubled its annual budget to reimburse farmers whose crops are damaged by elk or deer. but that brought spending only to $420,000, not nearly enough. See what this says here. Not nearly enough, landowners say. Fences don't work either. On Mr. Robertson's ranch, elk routinely jump standard barbed wire fencing. Their hides are too thick for the barbers to deter them. He has designed a new type of fence using high tensile steel, and it's gradually replacing his 35 miles of fencing to make it harder for elk and predators to enter and more challenging for cattle to escape. Could you imagine replacing 35 miles of fencing? Miles of fencing. That's insane. The only way to nudge stressed elk back to public land is to stress them more. Even as some of the biologists worry about the effect of stress on elk calves, to control the population, both Oregon and Washington rely on hunting and granting farmers the right to harass elk that wander onto their land. The elk population in Oregon is robust, according to wildlife biologists, but on the Washington side of the Blue Mountains, scientists are studying a decline in calf survival that they believe may be caused in part by all the competing pressures elk herds face. Researchers are using helicopters, dart guns, and tags to track elk movement. Some private landowners want elk on their property. Real estate listings across western Washington and Oregon increasingly advertise former ranches as potential hunting preserves. But elk do not understand property lines, and private hunting ranches adjacent to working farms can create new conflicts between neighbors. You've got more and more of these people who come out on the weekends, jump on their four-wheeler, drive around, and then go back to the city, Mr. Robertson said. Some of them don't care what all those elk they like to see on their land means for the next door. The U.S. Forest Service has been trying to come up with a long-term management plan for the Blue Mountains for more than 20 years, and is again considering a change. A draft management plan emphasizes thinning forests and using prescribed fire, which would create the mix of open forage and cover that biologists say elk prefer. But it's still not clear what the higher powers in Trump administration, which has emphasized expanding logging and recreation, will put in the final version. Federal officials have paused proposals that would reduce access in parts of the Northeast while such policy questions are resolved. Meantime, leaders in elk-free Portland, Oregon, 275 miles away from Robertson's Ranch, are spending $2 million to restore a downtown elk statue damaged during 2020 protests. Evidence of the deep culture, meaning that elk carry on across the Pacific Northwest. Andrew Wilbo, Wildlife Program Manager for the Confederated Tribes of Umatilla Indian Reservation, noted that many tribal creation stories feature elk and other ungulates in important roles, guiding clueless early humans. Basically, we didn't know how to live or take care of ourselves, so the animals took pity on us, he said. They said, we'll be there for you, but you have to be there for us. So, that's a different one. A little different story. Elk made the New York Times. All right. Here's something different. After elk, how about we talk about strawberries? Let's talk about strawberries. So, a lucrative export, bursting with flavor and family tradition. And there is a ton of illustrations. The entire page is full of illustrations. There's strawberries in desserts, people working at strawberries. It says it's a fussy fruit. You have to be quick and delicate. people taking pictures of strawberries. There is a strawberry field, strawberry fields forever. That's what this looks like. A huge farm, indoor-looking farm with a water system. Bowls and bowls of strawberries. A young child picking strawberries. Really cool illustrations. It looks like that these are out of, some of these pictures are out of Seoul, Korea. And let's see what this article says. Strawberries hanging from suspended planters at the South Korean farm are among the country's most important and beloved fruits. From artisanal bakeries in the countryside to lavish buffets at Seoul's top hotels, strawberries playing starring roles in cakes, lattes, salads, and even sandwiches. They're so delicate that pickers wear 2 layers of gloves to shield the fruits from the heat of their hands, said Jinju 40, a trainee strawberry farmer. They are like jewels, he said. After decades of research and modernization, strawberries have become one of South Korea's top fresh agricultural exports. Who would have thought that? Farmers have created better varieties and built greenhouses that maintain ideal conditions all year. For many South Korean families, harvesting strawberries together is a cherished activity. Some farmers host winter picking events in the climate-controlled greenhouses. Kim Ga-young, 35, brought her 2-year-old daughter to her village strawberry farm in the city of Namyanga. The girl wore pants with strawberry patterns. She was really excited to come here today, Miss Kim said, and she is in one of the illustrations. Technological advancements have transformed strawberry farming in South Korea, but it still requires a great degree of care. At the sorting plant, workers ensure their hands don't bruise the crop. Don't bruise the crop, people. It is a fussy fruit, said Go Kyungia, 58, who has sorted strawberries since her 20s. You have to be quick and delicate. A slight shift in moisture invites mold. A glitch in the heating system can destroy an entire season's work overnight. For decades, South Korean strawberry farmers grew European varieties in open fields, harvesting them in early summer. The introduction of greenhouses across rural areas in the 1980s enabled farmers to grow Japanese varieties, which are sweeter and ripen in cooler months when the fruit prices are higher. That transformed their fortunes. The people who could afford to send their kids to college were the strawberry farmers, said one of them, Kang Young Silk, 58. The transformation began in a lab. For decades, scientists at a government-funded research center worked to break farmers' reliance on foreign seeds, especially lucrative Japanese varieties. Woonsuk Jang, a researcher at the Strawberry Research Institute in Nonsan, ate 200 strawberries a day as he bred varieties for sweetness, yield, and size. A variety he helped to develop in the 1990s became the most widely cultivated in South Korea. It is relatively easy to grow and resistant to pests. Very good. South Korea's scientists and farmers have conquered the challenges of growing strawberries year-round and engineering high-quality local varieties. Now they have a new development target, strawberries that can survive long flights to other markets. Well, very good. At home in South Korea, pastry chefs have leaned into the abundance of locally grown strawberries. Many cafes here offer cakes and tarts with the fruit that are layered with surgical perfection. That is also another illustration. It was a layered fruit with strawberries in the middle and on top. They are aesthetically pleasing and on point. Hinjun Tang, a 31-year-old strawberry-based offerings at a dessert cafe in Seoul. It took decades for Seoul, Korea strawberry industry to reach its level of yield and profitability. Listen to this. Last year, its exports reached a record 72 million in value. Rising income has helped farmers and researchers to build an edge in other areas such as energy efficient greenhouses. Mr. Jang, the researcher, said part of the key to success was patience. Strawberries are such a fiddly crop, he said. Wow. Seoul Korea did 72 million in strawberries. I bet you don't know. I mean, maybe some of you do. What is the number one product at Walmart? The number one selling product at Walmart. What is it? It's not strawberries. If you guess bananas, you are right. So when you go to Walmart and you go through the medicines and the clothes and the sneakers and the food and all the groceries and everything that they have there, the thing that sells the most year after year at Walmart, the number one seller is bananas. That's a true one. All right, so what do we have here? Oh, food. Well, I might as well do some food since I'm talking about food. I'm always hungry anyway. What to make next week? Let's see here. What to make? Well, let's start out with, my father-in-law always does dessert first. So, Gordy, this is for you. I don't know if you're going to like it, but it's dessert first. Baked lemon pudding. This airy, lemony amalgam of souffle, pudding, and cake comes from one of Ireland's most lauded bakers, J.R. Ryle. As the head pastry chef of Ballymaloe House in Aching Green countryside, he turns out jewels of dessert. This big dish is meant for home bakers. You have to whip whites to form peaks, but that just takes patience. The magic those clouds work, naturally separating the batter into a pudding base and spongy cake top. Requires only your sliding the dish into the oven. So this says it takes an hour and it makes 4 to 6 servings. So what do you need? Well, we are going to need 1 tablespoon or 15 grams of unsalted butter, and you're going to soften that up. 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons or 225 grams of granulated sugar. 3 large eggs, yolks and whites separated. 3 tablespoons or 30 grams of all-purpose flour. Large lemons, grated and juiced, about 2 tablespoons zest and 6 tablespoons juice. 1 cup, 250 milliliters whole milk. Confectioner's sugar for dusting, softly whipped cream for serving. There's your ingredients. So what are we going to do here? Number 1, heat oven to 350 degrees and set a rack in the middle of the oven. Number 2, place butter in a medium mixing bowl. Gradually add sugar as you mash the mixture with a wooden spoon until it looks like damp sand. Number 3, mix egg yolks into sugar mixture, then beat in the flour. Add lemon zest and juice, then whisk in the milk. In a separate clean large bowl, beat egg whites to stiff peaks. Fold whites by hand gently in the batter. Number 5, pour mixture into a 5-cup ceramic or glass baking dish. Bake in the middle of the oven for about 40 minutes or until mixture is just set and the top is golden brown. Alternatively, bake in individual ramekins or custard cups for about 20 minutes. And number 6, serve warm, dusted with confection sugar and softly whipped cream alongside. So there is an illustration. It does look very good. I am sure everyone here wouldn't mind a little helping of this nice lemon pudding. Talk about lemons. One Mother's Day, I decided to get my mother something different than just flowers that are gone in a week. So I said, I'm going to get her a lemon tree. And I didn't know that you don't get any lemons, and I did not see that until I was at her house with the lemon tree. And it says it takes 3 to 5 years to grow one lemon. So that year, every time anyone asks me what I got my mom for Mother's Day, I told them 3 to 5. And everyone in that house died that I was the only one that would buy my mother a gift that she will not get anything out of for 3 to 5 years, which means I felt I was covered for 3 to 5 years. So why should I keep buying something every year if I already have something that's going to go for 3 to 5 years? I felt justified. Is there anything else here? Down to a couple minutes. I will say there's in the cooking section of New York Times, gingery fish with green beans. Very nice illustration. A nice healthy fish with green beans, and there's a side of rice. Orange roast chicken. One pot creamy pasta and greens. You cannot pass up. One pot creamy pasta and greens. Or how about some shrimp and avocado salad with peanut dressing? There is a illustration of all these dishes, and they all look good. Try something different this weekend. It's always nice to try a different dish, to cook something that you don't normally do, and to taste something that you don't normally taste, right? The vegetarian pad thai is another dish. Some of these dishes, I don't think I've ever had any ingredients on any of them whatsoever. So it is definitely nice to step out of your comfort zone, right? And try something that you're not used to eating or tasting or cooking. And maybe you'll find a new favorite. You just never know. So I hope you guys have a great rest of the weekend. I know by the time you hear this, it is Sunday. So enjoy that day. Enjoy Sunday. And hopefully in the next week or two, we start getting some nicer temperatures. As of now, though, you have been listening to the reading of the New York Times. And today is March 21st of 2026, Saturday. If you need any other information, you can call 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Your reader has been Joe Gibbs. I thoroughly enjoy spending the hour with you. Hopefully some of these stories are interesting. If you want to hear anything different from the New York Times, please give us a call and let us know, and I will hit on some different subject matters. Until then, have a great Sunday. Talk to you next week.